They believed ultimatums were the only language of strength. Admiral Eva Rostova watched the ultimatum timer bleed down on the main holographic display. It was a stark crimson font, stark against the cool blue of the Viridia Systems star. 78 minutes remained until the Kythian hegemony fleet, a menacing geometry of gunmetal gray warships, would open fire on the civilian convoy she was sworn to protect. The stakes were simple: forcibly annex the independent colony of Viridia, or reduce its lifeline to superheated plasma. The 34 unarmed transport ships huddled behind her fleet, filled with medical supplies, atmospheric processors, and families. Her flagship, the Terran Concordance ship Vigilance, felt steady beneath her feet, a low thrum of contained power that was more reassuring than any spoken word. "Solon confirmed their disposition," she said, her voice calm, a practiced counterpoint to the tension coiling in the command deck. Her fleet mind's avatar. A simple column of golden light shimmered beside her command chair. "Proctor Valerius holds his formation." The AI's synthesized voice replied, smooth as cooled glass. "Textbook blockade pattern focused entirely on the convoy. He perceives our 3 cruisers and 12 destroyers as a negligible threat." Rostova's gaze swept over the tactical plot, where enemy vessels were rigid icons of hostility. He's not wrong by conventional metrics. Their fleet was a border patrol, an escort force. The Kythian second echelon was a hammer, but the Concordance did not deal in conventional metrics. They did not deal in hammers. They dealt in lessons. "Communications, open a channel to the Proctor's flagship one last time," Rostova ordered. Her tactical officer, Commander Kalin, glanced over from his station, his expression a tight mask of professional concern. "Admiral, he has refused the last 4 hails." The faint scent of ozone from the overworked EW scrubbers tinged the recycled air. "Then he can refuse a 5th, she stated flatly. "Log it. Show that we gave every chance for de-escalation." The channel opened to a wall of static, then cleared to show Proctor Valerius on his own bridge. He was a man carved from granite and dogma, his face set in lines of absolute certainty. Behind him, his crew moved with a rigid discipline that bordered on theatrical. "Admiral Rostova," he began, his voice laced with condescending pity. "Your persistence is an inefficient expenditure of energy. The mandate of clarity is not a negotiation. It is a statement of reality. This system will fall under hegemony protection." Protection from whom Proctor Rostova countered, keeping her tone even. "Themselves. The convoy you are threatening brings them life-saving medicines and the tools to build a future." "Disorder is the only disease we are here to cure," Valerius retorted. "Surrender your charge, and your fleet may depart with its honor intact. Defy the mandate, and you will be rendered into a cautionary tale. You have 63 minutes. The channel snapped shut, leaving only the hum of the Vigilance's life support. Rostova let the silence hang for a moment, before turning to her crew. A choice given under duress is not a choice. Before the weight of command could settle too heavily, Rostova allowed herself a brief, focused moment to connect with the reason they were here. She keyed a private microchannel to the convoy's lead medical transport, the St. Jude. A harried but determined doctor appeared on her secondary screen, her face smudged with fatigue. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight but unwavering, "we have 36 children in cryogenic suspension for gene plague treatment. They can't be moved, and their pods can't withstand weapons-grade impacts. We are praying for you." Rostova met her eyes, a silent promise passing between them. "Doctor, focus on your patients. We will handle the noise outside." She closed the channel, the image of those sleeping children burning itself into her resolve. The stakes were not abstract concepts of sovereignty. They were measured in heartbeats. The command deck's air seemed to grow colder, the hum of the ship's reactor, a low growl in the deck plates. Solon, she said, her voice now stripped of all warmth, leaving only polished steel. He's committed. He believes his doctrine is a physical law of the universe. The AI's light column pulsed gently. His tactical rigidity is his primary vulnerability, Admiral. The doctrine demands he crush defiance directly and visibly. He will expect a frontal assault or a desperate flanking maneuver. Rostova nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the enemy formation. Good, she murmured. Let's give him a ghost to fight. We will not break their ships. We will break their certainty. Commander Kalin, initiate lattice protocol, Rostova commanded. Helm, bring us to engagement vector Delta. Release the first drone swarm on my mark. Kalin's fingers danced across his console, his eyes alight with a fierce focus. He knew the protocol. It was a classic concordant strategy reserved for bullies who refused to listen to reason. It was not a plan of attack. It was a lesson plan. The ship's deck vibrated as the drone launch tubes opened. Drones are away, Admiral, the helm officer, Jin, reported, her hands steady on her controls. On the main screen, a cloud of small, high-speed objects blossomed from the Concordance fleet, accelerating towards the Kythian blockade. They were programmed with the energy signatures of the entire escort fleet, magnified tenfold. To the Kythian sensors, it would look like a suicidal full-power charge. They're taking the bait, Kalin announced, a grim smile touching his lips. Multiple target locks on the drone swarm. Their weapon ports are opening. The console beside him glowed with incoming targeting data, a web of deadly intention focused entirely on the decoys. The tension on the bridge was a physical thing, a pressure against the chest. The coolant systems hissed, working to keep the electronics from overheating under the sudden processing load. The empty hand must appear to hold a sword. Proctor Valerius watched the Terran fleet charge. It was exactly as doctrine predicted. The weaker power cornered and desperate would lash out with irrational force. He felt a surge of cold satisfaction. Their sacrifice would be a testament to the hegemony's unwavering strength. The lesson would be etched into the history of this quadrant for 1,000 years. Target the lead signatures, he commanded his tactical officer. Full-yield particle beams. I want nothing left but atoms. Let the convoy watch. His command was absolute, his strategy pure. There was no room for deviation, no need for subtlety. The mandate was clear, and its instrument was overwhelming force. The forward batteries of his warships began to glow with terrifying energy. He would teach them the cost of defiance. A lesson taught with fire is soon forgotten in the ashes. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Rostova watched the Kythian fleet power up. They're committing their main batteries, Kalin confirmed, his voice tight. Energy readings are off the scale. The display showed the enemy ships pouring immense power into their primary weapons, preparing for an alpha strike that could vaporize a small moon. This was the first critical phase of the plan. Their arrogance had to be total. Solon, are the convoy arrays aligned? Rostova asked, her eyes never leaving the display. Affirmative, Admiral, the AI responded. All 34 transports have synchronized their cargo scanner deflectors. They are ready to paint the lattice. This was the secret heart of the protocol. It was not about the drones. It was about turning the hegemony's own sensors against them. Now Commander Jin, Rostova said, her voice cutting through the rising tension. Execute. The helm officer nodded, her knuckles white. With a few precise commands, the fleeing convoy did something impossible. They adjusted their course not away from the Kythians, but in a complex, interwoven pattern. Their low-power deflector arrays, normally used for navigating asteroid fields, pulsed in perfect unison. They were not fleeing. They were weaving a net. Valerius frowned. His sensors were flickering, showing ghost images and false energy readings near the civilian ships. It was insignificant sensor noise likely caused by the sheer energy output of his own fleet's weapons. Fire, he commanded, dismissing the anomaly. A wave of incandescent energy spears of pure destruction leaped across the void, aimed at the heart of the charging drone swarm. The void between the fleets ignited. The drones their purpose served vanished in silent, brilliant explosions. For a moment, victory seemed absolute. Valerius allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The threat was neutralized. The defiance was punished. Then his tactical officer's voice, sharp with alarm, cut through the calm. "Sir, new contacts, multiple contacts flanking us. They have the same signatures as the main fleet." On his screen, the Terran fleet appeared to have teleported. An entire formation of cruisers and destroyers was now positioned on his vulnerable port side, already in firing position. But it made no sense. No ship could move that fast. No drive system could be that efficient. The mirror does not lie. It only shows what is pointed at it. It's a trick, Valerius snarled, fury overriding his confusion. "Ignore the ghosts. All ships reorient, target the real fleet, find them." But his sensors were a storm of lies. Every time they tried to get a lock, the Terran fleet seemed to shift, to multiply, to be everywhere at once. The convoy's synchronized deflectors were catching the Kythians' own powerful sensor sweeps and bouncing them back at skewed angles, creating a hall of mirrors on a system-wide scale. The Kythian fleet, built for overwhelming focused force, was floundering. Ships began turning to engage phantoms, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. They were trying to fight shadows they themselves were casting. The scent of burned ozone was thick on Valerius's bridge now, a testament to his own systems straining against the impossible data. Admiral Kalin said, his voice a mix of awe and grim satisfaction. "The lattice is holding. They can't get a clear target lock on us or the convoy." Rostova watched the tactical display, her expression unreadable. The Kythian fleet was a frantic swarm of confusion, their rigid doctrine completely unprepared for an enemy that refused to play by their rules. "They are blinded by their own light," she said softly. "Their strength has become their blindness." The first cost of the maneuver registered as a soft chime on the engineering console. "Minor power fluctuations in the aft shield emitters," Admiral Jin reported. "The feedback from the lattice is causing some strain." Rostova acknowledged with a nod. Every action had a cost, a price to be entered on the ledger. A strained emitter was a small price to pay for the lives of an entire colony. This was the moment of decision. The Kythians were disoriented, their primary strength, targeted firepower, nullified. She could order her fleet to close in and destroy them while they were helpless. It would be a textbook victory, a decisive blow against the hegemony. Solon's light column pulsed, offering the calculation unprompted. "Optimal window for total annihilation is now open, Admiral. Probability of success, 98.7%. Estimated concordance casualties minimal." The logic was flawless. The calculus was clear. But Eva Rostova was not a creature of pure calculus. Her mission was not to annihilate. It was to teach. "Negative, Solon," she said firmly. "We are not here to create martyrs. We are here to create a precedent. The ledger is written in ink, not blood. Commander, signal the convoy. It's time for them to run," Rostova ordered. "Create a corridor. Make it look like a panicked, desperate escape. Vector them directly through the Eridani dust cloud." Kalin's brow furrowed for a second, before understanding dawned. The dust cloud will obscure their low-energy signatures, but the Kythians will still see the drive plumes. It will look like a clear shot. "Exactly," Rostova confirmed. "Proctor Valerius is a predator. His doctrine doesn't allow a wounded animal to escape. He will ignore the phantom fleet signatures around him and pursue the one tangible target he thinks he has. Her plan was shifting from defense to offense, but the weapon was not a torpedo, it was psychology. On the civilian transport St. Jude, the doctor held her breath as the ship lurched its engines, pushing it toward the churning nebula of interstellar dust. The children in their cryopods slept on, oblivious to the grand, dangerous dance happening around them. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, their trust in the concordance absolute, a fragile shield against the terrifying emptiness of the void and the fury of the fleet pursuing them. A single crack can shatter the strongest wall. As predicted, Proctor Valerius seized upon the fleeing convoy. His tactical display was still a mess of ghost signals, but the bright flaring drive signatures of the civilian ships were unmistakable. They were real. They were vulnerable. All ships disengage from phantom contacts. He roared, his voice raw with fury and frustration. Full pursuit of the civilian targets. Teach them that there is no escape from the mandate. His fleet, grateful for a clear order and a tangible enemy, pivoted. The disorganized mass of warships streamlined into a formation of pursuit, a spear aimed at the heart of the fleeing convoy. They plunged into the corridor Rostova had opened for them, eager to reclaim their authority and wash away the humiliation of the past hour with overwhelming force. They believed they were the hunters closing in for the kill. They failed to notice that the corridor was not an escape route. It was the jaws of a trap. The path to damnation is often well lit. "They are in the kill box," Admiral Kalin reported, his voice devoid of triumph, replaced by a grim sense of finality. The Kythian fleet was now perfectly positioned exactly where Rostova and Solon had calculated they would be. The dust cloud ahead of them wasn't just for hiding the convoy. It was full of concordance microprobes deployed hours ago. These probes were not weapons. They were mirrors. "Solon, are the gravimetric lenses aligned?" Rostova asked, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. The low vibration of the deck plates seemed to increase, a resonance building deep within the ship's core. "Alignment is perfect," the AI confirmed. "The probes have established a stable lensing field across the entire corridor. We are ready to turn the system inside out." This was the true purpose of the Lattice Protocol. The ghost signals were merely the opening act. The real weapon was gravity itself, bent and shaped by concordance technology. They were about to reflect the Kythians' own existence back at them in a way their doctrine could never comprehend. Rostova took a deep breath, the recycled air suddenly feeling thin. "Commander Kalin," she said, her voice ringing with the clarity of a bell, "settle the account. A reckoning is not about punishment. It is about balance." Kalin's hands flew across his console. "Executing," he said, his voice tight. "Activating the lensing field. Now." Deep in the Eridani dust cloud, the thousands of microprobes activated in perfect synchronization. They did not explode. They did not fire. They simply generated minute, precisely calculated gravitational fields. For a fraction of a second, the fabric of space-time within the corridor warped. For the Kythian fleet, the effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. It was not an explosion. It was a revelation. Every single sensor on every one of their ships, from the simple optical cameras to their most sophisticated subspace scanners, was suddenly flooded. The probes were using gravity to bend the light and energy from the system's star, from the distant galactic core, from every radiant source, and focus it directly onto the Kythian fleet. They were not just blinded. They were rendered deaf, dumb, and utterly alone in a universe of pure, unadulterated noise. Alarms shrieked across the bridge of Valerius's flagship. His tactical display dissolved into a waterfall of static. Every screen went white with overwhelming energy overload. The ship's automated systems, unable to process the sheer volume of nonsensical data, began to crash. You cannot command what you cannot see. Direct hit on their command and control, Solon reported calmly, its light column unwavering amidst the quiet intensity of the Vigilance's bridge. Their network is down. They are completely isolated from one another. Their own doctrine of centralized command is now their shackle. Rostova watched the Kythian icons on her display flash from hostile red to a chaotic, blinking yellow. They were still there, still armed, but they were effectively paralyzed. Proctor Valerius slammed his fist onto his dead console. Report, he bellowed into the chaos of his bridge. What was that? Was it a weapon? His tactical officer, his face pale in the flickering emergency lights, shook his head. No, sir. There was no impact, no warhead detonation. It was everything. All at once. Our sensors are burned out. We are blind. The truth of his situation settled upon Valerius with the weight of a dying star. He was adrift. His fleet, his instrument of absolute power, had been neutered without a single shot being fired against it. He had been so focused on the lesson he intended to teach that he never considered that he might be the one in school. The teacher must first be a student. Now Rostova made her move. Helm, bring us about. Position us at the mouth of the corridor. Kalen, open a broadcast channel. All frequencies. Unencrypted. The Vigilance and its escort fleet moved with predatory grace, emerging from their stealth positions to form a new blockade. This one was not a suggestion. It was a cage. Proctor Valerius Rostova's voice boomed across the emergency speakers of every ship in the Kythian fleet. Your fleet is incapacitated. Your sensors are non-functional. You are adrift in a system that is now under our control. You came here to deliver an ultimatum. Now you will receive one. The sheer audacity of it, the perfect brutal reversal of his own strategy, struck Valerius dumb. He was the one who dictated terms. He was the one who held the power. Yet he could not deny the reality of his situation. He was helpless, outmaneuvered by an opponent who refused to fight on his terms. They hadn't met his force with force. They had met it with physics. A debt has come due. Here are your terms. Rostova's voice continued cold and precise. You will power down your weapon systems. You will disable your engines. You will await instructions. If you comply, your crews will be treated with dignity, and your ships will be escorted out of Concordance territory once Viridia's sovereignty is formally recognized. A pause heavy with unspoken threat. If you refuse, she went on, if you attempt to fire blindly, or if you make any hostile move, I will not destroy your ships. That would be a waste of resources. Instead, I will instruct my fleet to surgically disable the life support on every one of your vessels, starting with your flagship. The choice is yours, Proctor. The ledger is open. How will you sign your name? The bridge of the Vigilance was silent, save for the soft hum of its systems. Every officer waited, their breath held. They had turned the hegemony's own doctrine against them, flipping the ultimatum on its head. They had offered a choice life with humility or death by doctrinal arrogance. The countdown timer on the main screen had long since become irrelevant. A new clock was ticking, measured not in minutes, but in the pride of a broken man. Hold the line. Let them choose their fate. Deep in the blinded Kythian flagship, Proctor Valerius stood amidst the wreckage of his certainty. His bridge was a cacophony of alarms and panicked reports. His crew looked to him for guidance, for an order that would make sense of the chaos. But there were no orders in the doctrinal texts for this. The mandate of clarity had no chapter on how to respond when you were the one staring into the abyss. He could not accept this. He would not. To surrender to such a tactic to a foe who refused to even fight honorably was a greater defeat than destruction. His legacy would be one of humiliation. "They mock us," he whispered, his voice trembling with a rage that was colder and deeper than any star. "They think this trickery is strength." He turned to his weapons officer, whose station was one of the few still partially functional running on isolated backup power. "Can you get a firing solution?" "Any solution." The officer shook his head desperately. "Sir, we can't even target our own noses. We would be firing into the dark." Valerius's eyes narrowed. "The dark is where they are hiding. Triangulate their broadcast signal. Give me a trajectory. We will fire at their voice. It is the final act of a tyrant to burn his own house down." On the Vigilance, a new alert flashed on Kalen's screen. "Admiral, I'm detecting a massive power surge from the Proctor's flagship. He's charging his main cannon." Solon's voice cut in crisp and immediate. "The firing trajectory is locked on our position. He is aiming at our broadcast signal. Impact in 45 seconds. Jin's hands were a blur over her console, her face set. Evasive maneuvers initiated. But Rostova held up a hand. "Belay that helm. Hold our position. Steady as she goes." A ripple of shock went through the bridge crew. To sit still while a particle beam charged was suicide. Admiral Kalen asked, his voice strained with disbelief. "They are firing blind, Commander Rostova," said her voice, a bedrock of calm in the rising storm. "They have no telemetry, no course correction. They only have rage." She turned to face the main view screen where the distant, silent shape of the enemy flagship was beginning to glow with lethal intent. "This is the final lesson, Solon, the one that must be witnessed. Show them the true cost of their philosophy." The AI's light column pulsed once in understanding and affirmation. "The mirror must now become a lens. Reroute all available power to the forward lensing emitters," Rostova commanded, her voice ringing with absolute authority. "Sync with the outer probe network. Instead of diffusing the energy, I want you to focus it. Create a singular, stable gravimetric point directly in the path of that beam." It was a maneuver of breathtaking risk. They would not dodge the beam. They would catch it. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power was shunted to the forward emitters. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the hull, the ship itself groaning under the immense strain. "Lensing field established." Jin confirmed, her teeth gritted. "It's stable, but it won't hold for long. The energy backlash will be significant." This was the second cost, far greater than a strained emitter, but it was a price Rostova was willing to pay. On the Kythian flagship, the weapons officer gave his final report. "Firing solution acquired, Proctor." "On your command." Valerius stared at the static on his screen, imagining Rostova's smug face. "Make an end," he snarled. The command was given. The weapon fired. A torrent of incandescent rage, a spear of pure destructive energy screamed across the void, aimed at the heart of the Vigilance. Brace for the reckoning. The beam of coherent energy traversed the distance in seconds. To the crew of the Vigilance, it was a terrifying star, growing at an impossible rate. They watched frozen at their stations, their trust in their admiral the only thing holding their fear at bay. The beam did not strike the ship. Instead, it hit the focal point of the gravimetric lens, a point in empty space a few kilometers off their bow, and space bent. The particle beam, an unstoppable force of physics, was caught twisted and turned back on itself. The lens, powered by the Vigilance and the entire probe network, performed a perfect, impossible reversal. The beam of energy was reflected not in a chaotic blast, but in a perfectly coherent, focused return to sender. It flew back along the exact path it had traveled, back toward the Kythian flagship, back toward the cannon that had fired it. Their ultimatum had finally been answered. Proctor Valerius did not even have time to understand what his sensors were failing to show him. He only saw a sudden impossible light flooding his bridge, a light that was the color of his own ship's weapons. And then there was only silence. The particle beam struck the forward section of his flagship, slicing through its own emitter housing and causing a catastrophic energy feedback loop. The warship did not explode in a dramatic fireball. Instead, it simply tore itself apart from the inside. A wave of silent concussive energy radiated outward as the ship's reactor core breached containment. The vessel, once a proud instrument of the hegemony's will, was reduced to a cloud of expanding, lifeless debris in a matter of seconds. The shockwave, a ripple of distorted space, washed over the Vigilance. The ship groaned, its frame shuddering violently. Emergency lights flickered on as multiple systems overloaded from the sheer strain of maintaining the lens. On the engineering deck, a plasma conduit ruptured, bathing a corridor in non-lethal but searingly hot energy, wounding 3 crew members who had been working to reinforce the power relays. The cost of victory was always paid somewhere. A balance has been struck. On the bridge, the crew picked themselves up, the deck plates no longer vibrating. The main screen showed the blossoming debris field where the Kythian command ship had been. The remaining ships of the hegemony fleet, leaderless, blind, and now witness to the impossible self-destruction of their proctor, floated aimlessly. They were utterly broken. Solon Rostova said, her voice quiet but firm. Broadcast the full sensor logs of that exchange to the remaining Kythian ships. Let them see what their proctor chose. Then repeat my original terms. There was no triumph in her posture, only a deep, profound weariness. She had not wanted this. But the proctor's doctrine had left no other path. He had demanded a simple universe of force and consequence, and in the end, the universe had obliged him. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. It was a core tenet of the Concordance, a reminder that the goal was enlightenment, not enslavement. The remaining Kythian captains, faced with undeniable proof of their proctor's suicidal arrogance and a choice between surrender and slow, pointless death, made the only logical decision. One by one, their power signatures faded. Their weapons powered down. Their engines went cold. They chose to learn. The Viridia system was quiet once more. The civilian convoy, safe and sound, resumed its journey to the colony below. The remaining warships of the Kythian second echelon floated silently, awaiting escort, their crews contemplating the ruins of a doctrine they had once believed was infallible. The cost had been high, not just in ships and lives, but in the shattering of an entire philosophy. Admiral Rostova stood on her bridge watching the transports begin their descent. She felt the weight of the last few hours settle on her shoulders. She had upheld the principles of the Concordance. She had protected the innocent. She had taught a lesson that would hopefully prevent future conflicts. But the memory of the proctor's final futile act of rage was a stark reminder of the fine line between strength and self-destruction. "Commander Kalin," she said, her voice soft, "transmit a full report to Concordance High Command. Title it The Viridia Reckoning, and send a priority message to the Hegemony's public forum. Log the proctor's final order and its consequence on the public ledger. Let their people see the true cost of the mandate of clarity. The tally must be made public." The silence on the bridge of the Vigilance was heavy, broken only by the soft chime of damage control reports and the distant hiss of emergency coolant. Kalin worked his console with a surgeon's precision, his face illuminated by the steady green glow of system diagnostics. The wounded are being transported to medbay, he reported, his voice low. The ruptured conduit is contained. Structural integrity is at 97%. We paid a price, Admiral, but we are fully operational. Rostova nodded, her gaze fixed on the field of debris that had been the Kythian flagship. It was a stark and silent testament to the inflexible logic of the mandate of clarity. Open a channel to the senior surviving Kythian captain, she ordered. A moment later, the face of a gray-haired, weary-looking officer appeared on the screen. His insignia marked him as Captain Bohr of the cruiser Iron Resolve. Unlike Valerius, his eyes held not fanaticism, but the profound shock of a man whose entire worldview had just been vaporized. Admiral Rostova, he began, his voice raspy. We have powered down as ordered. We are awaiting your disposition. Your disposition is this, Captain. Rostova replied, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. You will share the full sensor logs from your perspective with your fellow captains. You will confirm for them that Proctor Valerius fired on a stationary non-hostile vessel. You will hold your positions and await our escort out of this system. The truth must be witnessed by all sides. Bohr swallowed hard, a flicker of his old hegemony pride warring with the undeniable reality of his situation. He fired blindly. The captain admitted, the words tasting like ash. He sacrificed his ship and his crew for a principle that failed. We will comply. As his image faded, Solon's golden avatar pulsed beside Rostova's chair. Admiral, I am analyzing the final data burst from the Proctor's flagship just prior to its destruction. The AI's voice was calm, yet it carried an undercurrent of something new. It was not a standard communication signal. It was a hyper-compressed, encrypted doctrinal beacon, a mandate failure protocol. Its destination was not the nearest hegemony command base, but a classified location deep within their core territory. A new mystery was seeding itself in the quiet aftermath of the battle. A beacon that signaled not just a military loss, but a philosophical one. What was its purpose? Solon Rostova asked, a sense of unease beginning to creep up her spine. The air on the bridge, once charged with the energy of combat, now felt cold with foreboding. A doctrine that punishes failure so harshly fears its own flaw. Its purpose appears to be sanitation. Solon stated the clinical term more chilling than any overt threat. The protocol is designed to summon a higher authority in the event of a catastrophic doctrinal collapse. An entity tasked with purging the record, containing the ideological contamination, and erasing the failure, by any means necessary. The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. They hadn't just won a battle. They had triggered an immune response from a deeply pathological system. How long, Rostova asked, her mind already racing ahead, calculating vectors and response times. The signal was sent moments before the flagship's destruction. Based on its encoding and the likely FTL capabilities of such a specialized unit, I project a response vessel will arrive in this system within 3 standard hours. 3 hours. Not enough time to escort the disabled Kythian fleet away. Not enough time to fully resupply the Viridian colony. Just enough time to prepare for another confrontation. A new storm gathers before the old one has passed. Rostova established a secure link to the colony's surface. The face of the doctor from the St. Jude appeared now from a brightly lit triage center on Viridia. Behind her, colonists and crew members worked together, unloading crates of supplies. The sounds of life, of construction, of hope were a stark contrast to the sterile silence of space. Admiral, the doctor said, her face beaming with relief and gratitude. You did it. The first of the children is already being prepped for treatment. We owe you everything. Just do your work, Dr. Rostova replied, a faint smile touching her lips. Build your future. We'll keep the sky clear. She cut the connection, the image of their hopeful faces strengthening her resolve. The stakes had not changed. They had only grown larger, more complex. This was no longer just about saving a convoy. It was about defending the very idea of a future from a power that would rather burn its own history than admit a mistake. The ship's internal comms chimed. Admiral Jin's voice reported from the helm. Long-range sensors are picking up a high-energy FTL transition at the system's edge. It's a single vessel, but its power signature is immense, unlike any Kithian profile in our database. They do not send a fleet to correct a mistake. They send an eraser. The ship that emerged from the tearing fabric of space-time was a vision of geometric malice. It was a stark, blade-like vessel, obsidian black, and utterly featureless, absorbing the light of the nearby star. It radiated a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the physical embodiment of dogma. Solon's voice was grim. Vessel identified. It is the Hegemony Sensor-class ship Unblinking Eye. Its primary weapon system is not kinetic or energy-based. It is informational. A mnemonic scythe. Kalen looked up from his console, his face pale. Mnemonic scythe. What the hell is that? He asked the question, echoing the fear of the entire bridge crew. The scent of ozone, a familiar byproduct of a space battle, was now being replaced by the subtle, unnerving scent of fresh, chilled air being pumped into the command deck, as if to cleanse it of a coming taint. It is a weapon designed to attack the data itself, Solon explained, its light column flickering with a representation of the incoming threat. It projects a field that forcibly resets all digital systems within its effective range to a baseline factory state. It erases memory, ship logs, crew records, AI consciousness. Everything. Rostova felt a chill run down her spine. They were facing an enemy that didn't just kill you. It made it so you never existed at all. This is the cost of their ultimatum, a universe without a past, a channel opened unrequested. The image that appeared on the main screen was of a figure clad in stark white armor, their face obscured by a reflective, impassive helmet. The voice that emerged was synthesized, devoid of any emotion or inflection. I am Sensor Thrax. By the authority of the mandate, I am here to rebalance the historical ledger. The events that transpired in this system have been deemed a doctrinal anomaly. The sensor's gaze seemed to sweep across the bridge of the vigilance even through the screen. Admiral Rostova, your fleet is an error. The surviving vessels of the second echelon are a contaminated record. The colony below is a flawed proof. All errors must be corrected. You will not be destroyed. You will be nullified. The threat was so absolute, so alien in its philosophy, that it took a moment to fully comprehend. So you are here to murder your own surviving crews. Sensor Rostova challenged her voice like ice. The sensor's helmet tilted fractionally. A clean ledger does not have entries for failure. Their service is complete. Their testimony is a liability. Their erasure is a necessity. The mandate is preserved through purity, not sentiment. They would burn the library to hide a single misspelled word. The channel closed. The confrontation had been laid bare. This was not a battle for territory. It was a battle for the right to remember. Solon's light column pulsed with urgent calculations. Admiral, the mnemonic scythe has a significant charge time, but its effective range encompasses our current position and that of the disabled Kithian fleet. Evasive maneuvers are suboptimal. The field expands faster than our sublight drives can carry us. What is the optimal solution? Solon Rostova asked, already knowing the answer the AI's cold logic would provide. The sensor's vessel is powerful, but its shields are optimized against energy weapons, not kinetic impact. A full torpedo spread targeted at their primary power core before the scythe can fully charge has an 82% chance of neutralizing the threat. It is the only logical course of action. Preemptive strike. The one thing Concordance doctrine forbade, except in the most extreme circumstances. It was the antithesis of everything she stood for. To destroy an enemy before they had fired, to become the aggressor, was to stoop to the level of the hegemony itself. The conflict triangle had snapped into sharp focus her morality, Solon's calculus, and the censor's nihilistic doctrine. A line must be drawn even in the emptiness of space. "We are not murderers," Solon Rostova said, her voice quiet but unyielding. The deck plates beneath her feet felt solid, an anchor in a sea of impossible choices. "We will not win this battle by becoming what we are fighting against. There has to be another way." She looked at the tactical display, at the icons of the surrendered Kythian ships floating helplessly between her fleet and the censor. They were not just prisoners. They were witnesses. And that was the key. The censor's power came from its ability to erase the truth. It was a weapon of silence and forgetting. The only counter-weapon was one of noise and memory. She turned to Kalen. "Commander, get me Captain Bohr. Now." The Kythian captain's face appeared again, his expression now laced with fear as he stared at the monstrous censor ship that had appeared. "Admiral, what is that?" "What does it want?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It wants to erase you," Captain Rostova said bluntly. "It's here to sanitize the record. Your Proctor's failure, your surrender, your very existence. You are a loose end they intend to snip. Their own doctrine has come to devour them." The truth dawned on Bohr's face, a wave of horror followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated fury. The ultimate loyalty to the mandate was to be rewarded with oblivion. His crew, who had followed their orders perfectly, were to be wiped from history. That is not honor," he whispered. "That is an abomination." "Help me, Captain Bohr." Rostova said, her voice urgent. "I need you to open a ship-wide broadcast on your vessel and patch it into your sister ships. I am sending you the full, unedited logs of my conversations with Censor Thrax. Let your crews hear for themselves what the hegemony plans for its loyal soldiers." It was a desperate gamble. She was arming them not with weapons, but with the truth. "And what do you get out of this?" Admiral Bohr asked. His eyes narrowed with a lifetime of suspicion. "I get witnesses," Rostova replied. "The censor's power is in secrecy. We are going to make this the most public execution in the history of the galaxy. We are going to turn your fleet into a choir, and they are going to sing a song of remembrance. A single voice in the dark is a whisper. 1,000 are a roar." Aboard the Iron Resolve, Captain Bohr made his choice. He watched the data packet from the Vigilance arrive, containing the cold, synthesized voice of Censor Thrax decreeing his fleet's erasure. He looked at his bridge crew, at their tired, fearful faces. They had served the hegemony their entire lives. They deserved better than to be deleted. With a firm, determined motion, he activated the ship-wide broadcast. "All hands," he began, his voice shaking with righteous anger. "This is the captain. You need to hear this." Across the disabled Kythian fleet, the same scene played out. The censor's chilling words echoed through mess halls, engine rooms, and medical bays. The reaction was not panic, but a slow-burning collective rage. They had been betrayed not by an enemy, but by the very system they had sworn to uphold. The foundation of their universe had cracked. On the Vigilance, Solon reported the effect. I am detecting massive power spikes across the Keithian fleet, Admiral. They are not attempting to power weapons. They are rerouting all available energy to their communication arrays. Kalen's eyes were wide. They're doing it. They're turning themselves into a giant antenna. They will not be silenced. Sensor Thrax Rostova's voice broadcasted, now amplified by the combined power of a dozen Kythian cruisers and destroyers. Your mission of sanitation is being recorded. It is being broadcast on every open channel in this quadrant. The Viridia Reckoning now has a second chapter, and your name is on the title page. The sensor ship paused its charging sequence. For the first time, the impassive vessel seemed to hesitate. Your actions are illogical, the synthesized voice stated, a hint of something that might have been confusion entering its tone. You are collaborating with a doctrinal enemy. I am collaborating with soldiers you came here to murder. Rostova countered. You are the only enemy here, Sensor. You are the enemy of memory itself. The unblinking eye resumed its charge faster this time. Its mission was not flexible. Dissent was merely another error to be corrected. The record will be cleansed, the sensor stated flatly. The air on the Vigilance bridge crackled with energy as the mnemonic scythe prepared to fire. A reckoning cannot be erased. It can only be faced. Solon, it's time, Rostova said, her voice a low, steady command. If we can't outrun the field, we'll have to outthink it. I want you to do something you were never designed to do. I want you to fragment. The AI's golden column shimmered, processing the radical, unprecedented order. Admiral, such an action carries a 99% probability of my own core consciousness being permanently decentralized. I would cease to be Solon. You will cease to be a single point of failure, Rostova corrected gently. I need you to copy your core heuristic processes, your memories of this battle, everything that makes you you, and seed them into the data streams we are broadcasting. Hide yourself in the message. Let the Kythian fleet carry you. We will rebuild you later. It was a cost of victory she hadn't anticipated, the potential sacrifice of her closest advisor and friend. The logic is sound, Solon conceded after a long pause. The preservation of the data takes precedence. Executing fragmentation protocol. It has been an honor, Admiral. The golden column of light that was Solon's avatar dissolved into a billion motes of light, which then vanished from the bridge. The AI's voice was replaced by the standard impersonal ship's computer. A profound sense of loss settled over Rostova, sharp and unexpected. We must become the memory we wish to preserve. The scythe is about to fire, Jin called out from the helm, her knuckles white. The ship's lights flickered as the space around them began to warp with informational energy. Rostova gripped her command chair. They had done everything they could. They had turned the enemy's victims into their own broadcasters. They had seeded the truth into an unstoppable wave of data. Now they had to weather the storm. Brace for impact, she commanded. The mnemonic scythe fired. It was not a beam or a projectile, but an expanding wave of pure nullity. It washed over the Concordance fleet, silent and irresistible. On the bridge of the Vigilance, consoles went dark. Screens turned to static. The ship's advanced systems, its memory banks, its logs, all were wiped clean, reset to the moment the vessel was first commissioned. The Viridia Reckoning, from the Vigilance's perspective, had never happened. The wave continued washing over the disabled Kythian fleet. Their systems, too, were scoured, their logs erased. But the sensor's weapon was designed to erase data at rest, not data in flight. The message, the recording of the sensor's intent. Captain Bohr's defiance and the fragmented consciousness of Solon was already gone, propagating through subspace at the speed of light, carried on a carrier wave powered by the dying rage of the Kythian fleet. The word once spoken cannot be unfired. Aboard the unblinking eye sensor, Thrax registered the successful firing of the mnemonic scythe. All target systems were reset. The anomaly was corrected. The ledger was clean. Its mission was complete. It turned to leave the system a silent janitor, leaving a sanitized room. But as it prepared to enter, FTL alerts began to cascade across its console. From every corner of the quadrant, messages were flooding the Galactic comms network. The story of the Viridia reckoning, the recording of Thrax's own voice, the testimony of the Kythian crews now embedded in the signal itself. The censor had erased the books, but the story was now being screamed from the rooftops, carried by the ghost of the very fleet it had tried to silence. Its attempt to create a perfect, clean silence had resulted in the loudest, messiest uproar the hegemony had ever faced. Its logic could not compute this outcome. It was a paradox, an error, and the censor only had one protocol for dealing with errors. It began to turn its mnemonic scythe upon itself. A system that eats its own past has no future. Weeks later, Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the bridge of a slowly recovering Vigilance. Teams of engineers were painstakingly rebuilding the ship's systems, using backups stored at Concordance Command. But some things, like the unique personality of her fleet mind, were gone forever. A new generic AI voice now answered her commands. It was a constant aching reminder of the price they had paid. The physical tally on her main screen confirmed the final status of the hegemony fleet. Their ships, now crewed by Concordance prize crews, were being towed to a neutral starbase. Their former crews now key witnesses in the galactic inquiry that followed. The public ledger across the entire galactic network had been updated. The hegemony's mandate of clarity and its associated censorate had been declared a crime against sentient memory by the Galactic Concord. Its privileges were revoked, its authority shattered. The lights of the Viridia colony were a steady, brilliant jewel on the planet below, a testament to the future they had fought to protect. Rostova knew that strength wasn't found in the power to deliver an ultimatum, to force an outcome, or to erase a mistake. True strength was the resilience to face the truth, to record the cost, and to learn from the balance. It was the courage to open the ledger for all to see, no matter how messy the accounting. They built their universe on the idea that the ledger could be forced. We built ours on the knowledge that it must be earned.